Hi, my name is Andrii Suslenko at your Tiger Conference 2016 that is taking place in Kyiv Hilton Hotel. Serhiy Leschenko, Member of Parliament, is joining me here. Welcome, Serhiy. Thank you for those 10 or 15 minutes that we will talk together over here.
Thank you for the invitation.
You've been one of the panelists at Reality Check panel today. And of course, I would like to ask you, what are your emotions after the panel was over? Have you felt that you really discovered what is really going on in Ukraine?
First of all, thanks for the invitation. And I think this Reality Check panel was really about reality, not about optimism or about what you would like to see. It's about real situation, how it's going to be. And there was some kind of lack of optimism, but I think time for such approach is over, and we have to understand what is going on and what is reality about. And I think in next future we will go through some kind of turbulence in Europe, and Ukraine has to calculate this and to calculate the internal power to stay together and to pass through the reforming process as much as possible in this situation, not to achieve strong support from abroad.
And what is your own opinion? How successful have been the reforms in Ukraine in the idea of Ukraine in 2020?
Okay, very much closer than we were 3 years ago.
Okay.
But of course, we have to do a lot to achieve the goals we declared during the Revolution of Dignity, because there is some kind of time for populists now in Ukraine, because after almost 3 years since the revolution happened, people are a bit sick and tired with promises, and people are looking for simple answers on difficult questions because of lack of political will to fight against corruption and to conduct reform as fast as possible during previous 2.5 years. And in this situation, of course, we will see a lot of challenges on this way. But again, I think from one side, this is opportunities for society to be more strong player. Because now, when we discuss the reforming process, it's about some elite consensus, how to calculate votes in parliament, how to achieve some progress in government, how to argue European and American donors or IMF or European Commission to put reform legislation as conditionalities in roadmap. But I think in short-term perspective we'll see a number of challenges. In Europe, elections, referendums.
Right.
In US, we're gonna see new administration. So it's a time to calculate internal power and to involve Ukrainian society in the reforming process, to argue people why it's important, why we have to proceed with reforms, and to do this homework at home,
Right.
not abroad.
Mr. Leschenko, you had your own ideas and expectations from the years from the revolution. So since last 2 years, your expectations and reality, how far are they from each other?
During the revolution, of course, it was completely unpredictable what's going to happen. After Yanukovych fled from Ukraine, it was so strong demand of society to see Ukraine reformed. And of course, in reality, it's much more difficult because we did not face change of elites in Ukrainian politics. Right. It happened because of legislation. Election 2014 happened took place on electoral law of Yanukovych, and old politicians, corrupt guys who just paid money, were elected in parliament. And of course, they started to recover money spent during campaign and started to enrich themselves using politics. Now, in this parliament, the capacity of reforms is going down day by day. I still believe this government, this parliament still can conduct reforming process, but at the same time...
You do believe that?
At the same time, I understand reality, because we were on Reality Check panel, and I understand the reality that populism will gonna grow in politics as closer we go toward presidential and parliamentary elections. So in this situation, the only actor we still not engaged enough is society. So I think it's time for fair dialogue with society, explaining people why we have to do this and why we need your support. For instance, we are discussing about early elections, but early elections will not have any changes if we have these elections on current electoral basis law. We have to change electoral law. How to change electoral law? We have lack of political will to change this law from parliament and from president, because for president it's convenient to have majoritarian candidates, then to collect majority using the prosecutor general position, collect votes for successful voting. In this situation, we have to explain society. You will have such corrupt politicians as far as we have this electoral law. And we have to combine our efforts with society.
Sure.
Of course, include our Western partners, include our think tanks and our journalists, saying, let's stay together and establish this coalition, and to push old-style politicians to change rules in this game. And I'm not talking about electoral legislation. I'm talking about that we have to reform General Prosecutor Office. We have to establish independent, at least anti-corruption court.
Yeah.
We have to protect National Anti-Corruption Bureau from attempts to limit their capacity. We have to change taxation and customs rules, because if we're talking with small and medium enterprises, all of them saying nothing happened during 2 years and a half in taxation and customs. And of course, for strong and sustainable democracy, middle class is crucial.
Of course.
And middle class is formed by small and medium business. This is so clear and so difficult to proceed through this path of reforms that I think we have to stay in closer dialogue with society.
Mr. Leschenko, are you planning on being a politician until 2020 or even further, or you want to switch to any other?
I wish.
You wish?
Nobody knows what's going to happen, but of course, our work is not finished.
Okay, that's very optimistic, as for me. Then let's talk about journalism for a bit. You're not planning to come back to the journalism, but you're still writing your pieces?
Yeah, I think this is a unique time we are living now, when we have hybrid war.
Right.
When war is going on, at the same time it's not declared. When we have foreigners in government. Maybe 25, 30 years ago it was not possible to imagine when foreign president or foreign minister come to Ukraine to work as a governor or in another position. Now it's possible, it's a hybrid world. And for politics it's also a hybrid period when we can combine media tools, when we combine political tools, when each person who has access to Facebook, he can be a reporter.
Yeah.
And when social media sometimes play much bigger and stronger role than traditional TV stations. So I think there is no rules now.
So you will combine?
I'm going to combine, of course, because you cannot survive in this vibrant world, in this vibrant time when you just ignore media tools.
Mr. Leschenko, how would you describe today's journalism in Ukraine? Does it have enough of ethics? Is it being ruled by proper owners, or is it independent or not?
This is a very good question, because we have process on both sides. From one side, we have really strong investigative journalism school in Ukraine. During last 5-6 years, hundreds of investigative journalists grew up in Ukraine. We have very good investigation. In UK or in Germany, such investigation you can find once a year. In Ukraine, on every week basis, you can watch really strong, powerful investigation with foreign jurisdiction, with special equipment. This investigation done on everyday basis in Ukraine. So in Ukraine is good school for investigative journalism now. From another side, we have so incredibly increase of so-called yellow media, or just media of when people simplifying the problem, when journalists are trying to use personal lives to spin up the scandals about any public figures.
Right.
And this is very short way to popularity, but at the same time is very fast track to primitivization of society. When people are when audience is starting to consider politicians as a pop stars, and when they are using TV stations not the way to understand what is going on, just the way for enterprise, just the way to relax and to simplify the life.
How independent or dependable is Ukrainian media? And I know you know the answer.
Now, situation is different than it was in year 2000 when I joined Ukrainska Pravda.
Right.
Of course, very different. And not only because new outlets were established, but just because this proportion between new media and TV stations are completely different. Now, social media and internet publishers, they create agenda for media on everyday basis. And 10 years ago, it was not so dramatic. But at the same time, I can say that traditional media are still biased. They still are in service for their owners, who are mainly oligarchs. And these owners trying to use media for personal goals, providing some political support for politicians who are ready to protect their interests, and attacking politicians or civil society leaders who are against the schemes established by these oligarchs. So, unfortunately, TV is still main source for information for society. About 82% are main source. 82% use TV as a main source of information. At the same time, internet and social media, there are about 40% of society who use internet media as the second source of information. So, monopoly of TV is destroyed completely. At the same time, role of independent media is not so strong. So, my score is about 5 from 10.
Okay. Do you feel that public television would help the situation? And when is this going to happen?
For me, it's my personal pain.
Okay.
Because I know that establishing of strong, powerful, independent public broadcaster is crucial, not just because as a source of unbiased news for society, but also is very important for competition with biased oligarchs media. When audience have access to TV and they can use this switcher to see their
to choose
biased oligarchs media, the independent public broadcaster. Of course, biased media will understand that they cannot produce this fake news on everyday basis because audience will vote against them just using the switcher, just watching public broadcasting. That is why I feel that Ukraine has not achieved a lot on this path of reestablishing government television as a public broadcaster. And I think we have to pay a lot of efforts supporting people who are in charge of this reform. And I'm really not satisfied with the result for today because the reform started in the spring 2014. Now is almost winter 2016, so 2 years and a half passed. Strong result is not achieved. At the same time, I can agree that on the national TV now you can see investigation against higher level officials, against ruling president and government, which was not possible before 2 years and a half ago. And now I think it's time for real reforms at national broadcaster toward public broadcasting.
Until 2020, is there any chance that we're going to have at least several steps done in public broadcasting system?
I think at that time we're going to see some result. But at the same time, the risk of recovery is also recovery of corrupt TV, let's say this way, is still high. So we have to combine efforts again. If you remember, in Czech Republic, there were some attempts to control public broadcaster by ruling party, and people just came out to the street protesting against it. They came to the studio of a public broadcaster, staying next to reporters
to
and
defend
saying that we would not allow you politicians to destroy independence of media. I want to see such demand, such approach in Ukraine. Unfortunately, it has not happened. But I hope we will explain people, and people will understand how important it is to have independent public broadcasting.
So do I hear it correctly in the end? Public society is not ready yet. It's still developing.
Public society, civil society and regular society is not completely, but a little bit different.
Those are two different stories.
Yeah, society is more care about everyday life.
How to survive.
And civil society in Ukraine is quite strong actor, because sometimes civil society is a factor of legislation. They prepare legislation on reforms. Recommendation package of reform is a very cool example when civil society is engaged in political process, in policy making. But society, it is not less important actor. And we have to go to society and explain, people, you will never have good salary or good pension unless you stay together with politicians who are protecting democracy, rule of law, transparent schemes in economy and public sector, privatization and so on and so forth. And I hope society gonna be more involved in this inclusiveness of reforming process.
Ukraine is super popular place for conferences, overconference, that's the word. And you came to Tiger Conference as one of the speakers, one of the panelists. So my last question would be, what's important about this conference, that it happens year by year, and what's important that you appear at this conference?
So it's cool that it's happened in Ukraine, and I wish organizers to have such a conference next year and as long as possible, because Ukraine can be so kind case study for countries in transformation process, which way of reform should be done and which mistakes you should avoid on this path. And again, in democratization, important point is that Ukraine made a lot and lost a lot, and for region we can be some kind of hub when journalists who are under attacks, who are in threats, come to Ukraine from Russia, Belarus, Kazakhstan to stay here and to use Ukraine as Munich was for Radio Free Liberty, Free Europe, Radio Liberty in Soviet times. So to be some kind of basis for independent journalists for the whole region, and as well with the conference, Ukraine can be good example, good as I explained, case study.
Right.
And
very good point.
Such conference allow people to understand mistakes, at the same time understand priorities and understand privileges to be investors in Ukraine. Because from one side, we are not satisfied with reforms. From another side, Ukraine is a brilliant example when you can come and invest money when entrance fee for these investments is not so high. Because of devaluation of hryvnia, because of problems with economy,
right?
You can come and invest. In 5-10 years, it's going to be much more expensive and much more difficult. I'm telling from my experience, when we started Ukrainska Pravda in the year 2000, no internet media were at the time, and for us it was very easy to be one of the biggest players because we started from the beginning. Now that one who comes to Ukraine to invest money, they will have much more privileges compared to people who will come in 10 years. Because, of course, Ukraine has optimistic future. It's a country with big opportunities, with transition opportunities, with agricultural opportunities, with industrial opportunities, with IT opportunities, with a big number of ways to earn money for investors. And of course, Ukraine will recover. But if you come now, you will save your money in future. So my wish is come to Ukraine, invest money in Ukraine, and push our government toward the reforming goals.
Wonderful. Thank you, Mr. Leschenko.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.